The city never really slept. Even at midnight, its streets shimmered with neon lights, honking horns, and the restless footsteps of people chasing something: money, dreams, or escape. Kareen had been chasing survival for the last 15 years. At 48, he looked much older. His hair had thinned, his shoulders drooped, and dark circles permanently framed his tired eyes. Every morning before sunrise, he left his small rented apartment, kissed his sleeping daughter on the forehead, and stepped into his old yellow taxi. That taxi was more than a vehicle. It was his livelihood, his pride, his burden. Kareem used to be a school teacher in a small village. He loved teaching children about history and poetry. But when the school shut down due to lack of funding, he had no choice but to move to the city. Dreams were replaced with bills. Chalk was replaced with a steering wheel. Tonight had been especially exhausting. It had rained heavily, flooding half the streets and causing traffic jams everywhere. Passengers were impatient. Some complained about the wet seats. Others argued over the fare. One man had even shouted, "Why don't you get a better job if you can't drive properly?" Kareem had remained silent. He had learned long ago that silence often paid better than pride. By 11:30 p.m., his body ached, his back throbbed from sitting too long, and his eyes burned from staring at headlights. He considered heading home. His daughter, Aisha, would be asleep by now. She was only 10, but she understood more than most adults. She never complained about their small apartment or the second-hand clothes she wore. Instead, she would hug him every evening and say, "Abu, one day I will make you proud." That thought always kept him going. Just as Kareem decided to take one last ride before heading home, a young woman waved him down near the hospital. She looked distressed. "Please," she said, opening the door, "can you take me to Greenview Apartments? Quickly." Kareem nodded and started driving. In the rearview mirror, he noticed tears streaming down her face. "Is everything okay?" he asked gently. "My father is very sick," she replied, her voice trembling. "He's been admitted for weeks. I just found out we need more money for his surgery. I don't know what to do." Kareem felt a familiar heaviness in his chest. Years ago, his own wife had fallen ill. They couldn't afford the proper treatment in time. He had sold everything: furniture, jewelry, even borrowed money, but it wasn't enough. She had passed away on a rainy night much like this one. "I'm sorry," Kareem said softly. "Life tests us in ways we never expect." The young woman wiped her tears. "Do you ever feel like giving up?" Kareem thought about it. There had been nights when he had parked his taxi by the river and stared into the dark water, wondering how much longer he could, and mornings when his body refused to rise from bed. But then he would remember Aisha, and he would stand up again. "Yes," he answered honestly, "many times. But I have someone waiting for me at home. That's enough reason to keep going." They drove in silence for a few minutes. The rain tapped against the windshield like a soft rhythm. When they reached Greenview Apartments, the meter showed a higher fare than usual because of traffic delays. The woman opened her purse and counted the money. Her face turned pale. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm short. I can transfer the rest tomorrow, I promise." Kareem looked at her shaking hands. For a moment, he thought about the rent due next week, the electricity bill, Aisha's school fees. But then he remembered the hospital corridor, the smell of antiseptic, the feeling of helplessness. He turned off the meter. "It's okay," he said. "Pay what you can." The woman stared at him. "But sometimes," Kareem continued, "we help each other not because we can afford to, but because we understand." Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they were different. "Thank you," she said. You have no idea what this means." She handed him the money she had and stepped out of the taxi. Kareem watched her disappear into the building before starting the engine again. He checked his earnings for the day. It was less than he had hoped. He sighed. On the way home, the streets were quieter. The rain had stopped. The city lights reflected on puddles, creating a strange beauty in the darkness. When he finally parked outside his building, it was past midnight. He climbed the stairs slowly, his legs heavy. Inside the apartment, the single bulb in the living room was still on. Aisha sat at the small table, struggling to stay awake. "Abu," she exclaimed, running to him, "you're late." Kareem smiled tiredly. "Why aren't you sleeping?" "I was waiting for you." She held up a piece of paper. "Look, I got the highest marks in my class today." Kareem's exhaustion faded for a moment. He knelt down and hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. Aisha noticed the sadness in his eyes. "Did someone make you upset?" Kareem shook his head. "No, I just had a long day." She disappeared into her room and came back with a small jar filled with coins. "I've been saving this," she said proudly, "for my school trip, but you can use it if you need." Kareem felt his throat tighten. "No," he said, firmly but gently. "Keep it. Your dreams are important." Aisha hugged him again. "One day, Abu, you won't have to drive the taxi anymore." Kareem smiled. Maybe she was right. Maybe one day she would become a doctor or a teacher or anything she wanted. Maybe one day the sacrifices would turn into something brighter. As he lay down that night, his body still aching, he thought about the young woman and her sick father. He thought about his own past. He thought about Aisha's hopeful eyes. The world was heavy. Life was unfair. The roads were long and unforgiving. But as long as someone waited for him at home, he would keep driving. Because sometimes being tired is not a sign of weakness. Sometimes it is proof that you are carrying love on your shoulders. And Kareem carried it every single day. The next morning, Kareem woke up with the same stiffness in his back and the same quiet determination in his heart. Aisha had already prepared tea for him. The steam curled gently in the cool morning air. "Don't forget to smile today, Abu," she said playfully. Kareem chuckled. "I'll try." But smiling was not easy. The taxi had started making a strange rattling noise the night before. He feared what that might mean. Repairs were expensive, and his savings were almost gone. Still, he stepped into the driver's seat and whispered his usual prayer before turning the key. The engine coughed, then started. "Good," he murmured. The day began like any other. Office workers rushing to meetings, students late for classes, tourists asking too many questions. The city buzzed with impatience. By noon, the rattling sound grew louder. At a red light, the taxi suddenly jerked and stalled. Kareem's heart sank. Drivers behind him honked angrily. He quickly pushed the car to the side of the road with the help of a kind rickshaw puller. After calling a nearby mechanic, Kareem waited under the scorching sun. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he calculated numbers in his head. If the repair cost too much, he wouldn't be able to pay rent. The mechanic arrived and checked the engine carefully. "It's serious," he said. "You've been ignoring this problem for weeks, haven't you?" Kareem gave a weak smile. "I was hoping it would fix itself." The mechanic shook his head. "Nothing fixes itself, brother." After a few minutes, he named the cost. Kareem felt dizzy. It was nearly everything he had saved. For a moment, he considered refusing. Maybe he could drive it a few more days. Maybe it wouldn't break down completely. But deep inside, he knew the truth. He handed over the money. By the time the taxi was fixed, half the day was gone. Kareem drove slowly, trying to recover some earnings, but customers were fewer in the afternoon heat. Around 5 p.m., as he parked near a busy shopping center, someone tapped on his window. It was the same young woman from the hospital. Kareem blinked in surprise. You? He said. She smiled warmly this time. I was hoping I'd find you. How is your father? Kareem asked immediately. He had the surgery this morning, she replied. It was successful. Relief washed over Kareem's face. That's wonderful news. She held out an envelope. I asked the hospital security to help me find taxis from last night. I remembered your license number. Kareem frowned slightly. You didn't have to. Please, she interrupted gently. This is the rest of the fare, and a little extra. He shook his head. No extra. She insisted. You helped me when I felt completely helpless. My father says people like you are rare. Kareem hesitated, then accepted only the remaining fare. Keep the rest for your father's recovery, he said. The woman smiled again. At least let me know your name. Kareem. I'm Nadia, she said. Thank you, Uncle Kareem. As she walked away, Kareem felt something unfamiliar inside him. Hope. The day slowly improved. He got a few long-distance rides. One passenger even tipped generously after hearing about his daughter's academic success. That evening, when Kareem returned home, he brought Aisha her favorite sweet. Her eyes lit up. What's the occasion? Just celebrating a good day, he replied. After dinner, as Aisha studied beside him, Kareem noticed something. The exhaustion was still there. The bills were still waiting. Life was still uncertain, but something had shifted. Maybe kindness had a strange way of returning. Maybe the world was not only harsh and demanding, maybe it also remembered. Before sleeping, Kareem looked at his daughter and said softly, Aisha, promise me something. What, Abu? No matter how successful you become, never forget to be kind. She nodded seriously. I promise. Kareem turned off the light and lay down. Tomorrow would bring new struggles, new passengers, new traffic jams. But he would face them, because sometimes life doesn't change overnight. It changes slowly, ride by ride, act by act, heart by heart. And Kareem, the tired taxi driver, was no longer just surviving. He was quietly building something stronger than money. Weeks passed. Life returned to its usual rhythm: early mornings, long roads, late nights. The taxi no longer made that frightening rattling sound, but Kareem's body still carried the weight of endless hours behind the wheel. One evening, as he waited near the hospital again, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? He answered. Uncle Kareem? This is Nadia. He immediately recognized her voice. Yes, Nadia. How is your father? He's recovering well, she replied tearfully. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Kareem listened carefully. My father owns a small transport company, she explained. Not very big, but stable. When I told him about you, the way you helped me, he said he would like to meet you. Kareem felt confused. Meet me? Why? He believes that honest people are hard to find. We need a supervisor for our drivers, someone responsible, someone who understands hardship. Kareem went silent. A supervisor? That meant regular hours, a fixed salary, less physical strain. Uncle? Nadia asked gently. I don't know what to say. Just come tomorrow afternoon, please. The next day, Kareem wore his cleanest shirt. It was slightly faded, but neatly ironed. His hands trembled a little as he entered the small office building. Inside, Nadia's father sat in a wheelchair near the window. He looked weak, but dignified. So you are Kareem, the older man said warmly. Yes, sir. Nadia's father smiled. My daughter told me everything. You showed kindness when you had every reason not to. Kareem lowered his eyes. I only did what felt right. The old man nodded slowly. That is exactly why I want you here. They talked for nearly an hour about responsibility, about honesty, about the struggles drivers face. At the end of the meeting, the old man said, "The job is yours if you want it." Kareem felt his throat tighten. For years, he had believed life only took from him. Today, for the first time, it felt like life was giving something back. I accept, he said softly. When Kareem returned home that evening, Aisha noticed something different. Abu, why are you smiling like that? He sat beside her and held her small hands. I might not have to drive the taxi every day anymore. Her eyes widened. Really? Yes, I'll work in an office. I'll still help drivers, but I won't be so tired. Aisha threw her arms around him. I told you, she laughed. One day things would change. Kareem hugged her tightly. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought about the long roads he had traveled, the angry passengers, the sleepless nights, the painful memories of loss. None of it had been easy, but none of it had been wasted either, because every struggle had shaped him into someone strong enough to stay kind, even when exhausted. Months later, Kareem occasionally visited the streets, not as a driver, but as a supervisor checking on his team. He treated every driver with respect. He listened to their problems. He made sure no one was unfairly blamed or underpaid. He understood their pain. And whenever he saw a tired taxi driver gripping the steering wheel at midnight, he felt a silent connection. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Nadia approached him. You've changed this company, she said. Kareem smiled gently. No, the city changed me. At home, Aisha continued excelling in school. She often studied late, determined to become a doctor. One night she asked, Abu, were you ever afraid? Kareem thought for a moment. Yes, he admitted, very afraid. But courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about driving forward even when you're tired. Aisha nodded thoughtfully. Kareem looked out the window at the glowing city lights. Once, those lights had felt overwhelming, cold and distant. Now they felt different. They were reminders that even in the busiest, harshest cities, kindness could quietly open doors. Kareem was still a simple man. He still woke early. He still worked hard. He still missed his late wife deeply. But he was no longer just a tired taxi driver.
He was a father who never gave up, a man who chose kindness over bitterness, and proof that sometimes the smallest acts, letting someone pay less, offering a gentle word, staying patient in traffic, can change the direction of a life. The city still never slept, but Kareem finally did peacefully, as building a legacy of kindness